Welcome to today's webinar, How to Successfully Deploy a Remote Workforce, brought to you by ArcherPoint. Our presenter today is Greg Kaupp, CEO of ArcherPoint. Greg co-founded our company in 2002, and as our CEO, he has led us in our growth from a 3-person firm to a 120-person employee-owned, self-funded company with a remote workforce. Today, Greg will address many things you need to consider as you deploy your remote workforce, including tools, systems, culture, communications, and leadership. So let's go ahead and get started. Greg, over to you.
Thanks, Suzanne. So I don't know about the rest of you, but these are some crazy times. I honestly don't know, like this cartoon, whether I work at home or live at work now. Who knew what it'd feel like to have our spouses working at home with us, our kids doing e-learning or online school, and my guess is the situation probably isn't going to change until the end of the year, at least for our kids. I know schools are already talking about not bringing them back until August. So this is crazy. So I have some questions for you. Love to know what are you finding the most difficult about deploying a remote workforce? So you'll see there how you can respond to my poll. Yep, internet speeds, devices. And give it another second, see if we get any more responses. You can respond multiple times too. You're not limited to one. Okay. Have another question. Oh, let's see. Family. Yep. Internet. Well, hey, I've got a number of things to address internet because I will tell you that has been driving me absolutely crazy. I was realizing I've actually been working remotely since 1999. And even with 20 years of working at home under my belt, nothing has been like the challenges I faced in the last 2 weeks, as not only my family is here all day with me, but my neighbors' kids, they're all sucking up the internet bandwidth in our area. So good. Well, I got a couple more questions here for you. Let me hit the next one. Next one is, what are you personally finding most difficult about working at home? Haven't seen toilet paper come up yet, so hopefully all of you got stocked up while there was still paper products to be had. Okay, and I've got, I'll give it another second here. Yeah, boundaries, that's a good one. Okay, I've got one more question for you. What are you currently using for remote collaboration? Okay, looks like a lot of Skype, Zoom, Teams. Okay. Well, let's get started because a number of the challenges you're feeling, even though I'm used to this, I'm feeling many of the same challenges because working at home right now is not like working at home has ever been. So let's hit how are we going to address some of these things. So I basically broke the presentation down today into 4 areas. I want to focus on practical considerations as well as social, culture, and then security when we talk about deploying a remote workforce. So as we get to the practical, and I saw this come up in our polls, slow internet. I mean, that to me has almost driving me insane as I think about what do I do about the slow internet? I mean, this is unlike anything I've ever faced. So the one thing, and this is a challenge we've faced for years, is what I'm going to call the last mile challenge. Since we have largely been a virtual organization from the day we started, we've always dealt with the issue that no matter how great our infrastructure was, we were always limited by what ultimately was in an employee's house. And that's typically going to be their internet, their router, their modem. And so what I want to talk about is how do we begin addressing some of those challenges as we deploy remotely. So I'm sure many of you, like me, have been frequent visitors to the speed test website. and testing what kind of download speeds you're getting. So what I want to kind of talk through has been my own journey over the course of the last week, as I've wanted to just pull my hair out, as the kids and spouse, my spouse and everyone here at home during the workday has really been sucking up the bandwidth, as well as my neighbors and kids and everybody else. So you'll notice I'm actually getting some pretty decent download speeds right now. I just did this morning, 316 down. Now, the interesting thing is I actually pay for 1,000 down. Not getting anywhere near that, but during different parts of this week, there were times of the day where I was actually getting no better than 10 down, and it was making it really difficult to function. So partly because I had to figure it out for myself, and also I thought this would be a good exercise in preparation for this presentation, I went on a hunt, figuring out what do I need to do to solve the specifically the download speed challenge I was seeing. Now you'll notice down here at the bottom, when you do a speedtest.net analysis, you'll also get the different applications that are having trouble. So it probably should come as no surprise, Zoom and Microsoft Teams are experiencing problems. So if you're having issues there, it may not be your internet, but that's why first for me, I always go to check and see what download speeds am I getting, and am I getting those consistently? So what I identified, number of things. Well, actually, let me show you one more test you may want to go check out. We also discovered for voice over IP, the speed test that I showed you right before doesn't give you oftentimes what will become problematic for voice over IP. There's you can go do this test. It's megapath.com. Speed Test Plus was one of the better ones I found here recently. Now, when you do this test, the thing you're going to be most interested in looking at is the latency and jitter. So you could have amazing download speeds, but if there's high latency or a lot of jitter on the line, your voice over IP quality is going to be terrible. So you'll notice, based on this test, actually I'm getting pretty decent voice over IP quality right now as well. But this is one of the challenges. We probably went through 5 different voice over IP systems before we ultimately settled on RingCentral, which for whatever reason, regardless of kind of different people's their home internet situation, it seemed to work best with the majority of people across the country, because we've got people spread across about 26 states, Canada and India. And among the 5 other voice over IP systems we tried, we could never get a quality or consistent call quality. We finally have that with RingCentral. But I encourage you, go check out this for voice over IP. And then, many of us have moved to Zoom and Microsoft Teams, but realize everybody has moved to Zoom and Microsoft Teams right now. So as they begin to get their systems upgraded to deal with the demand, we are going to experience some issues there around latency, some choppiness on the call, and sometimes we've had to shut down video just because it doesn't seem like either the bandwidth or the platform can support it. So what is the first thing I would encourage you or anyone in your organization to do? Upgrade your modem. So one of the things I identified as I began trying to tackle internet bandwidth problems was my modem. I hadn't upgraded my modem in years. And when I upgraded my modem, I identified pretty quickly that I could move from 100 megabits to 300. I didn't realize my modem was only rated, or my old modem was only rated for a certain speed. The next thing that I identified was around the router. So again, my router only supported certain speeds, both the wired and the wireless. So by upgrading the router, that significantly improved the quality and the speed of the internet speed I was experiencing. Now, remember, if you're like with Comcast like I am, that's a shared bandwidth. So when all your neighbors are at home, kids are streaming, everybody's watching videos, that is going to impact you. But I've been amazed by just upgrading the modem and the router, the improved speeds I'm getting. The other thing I'd encourage all of you to do is go update your firmware. That was another bottleneck I identified within my own network. So make sure you do that. And then one of the most surprising things I've identified in my own network, which I'm working on getting resolved, is cabling. It'd been so long since I had even thought about cables that I'd forgotten that Cat5 is only rated for 100 megabits. So if you've got 1,000 megabit capacity or capability with your modem, your Ethernet card can support it. Everything in your system can support higher speeds, but you're using the old Cat5 cables you had laying around, you're not going to get the speed you want. So get upgraded to at least Cat5e. And I think as you begin tackling each one of these potential bottlenecks in succession, you'll notice some dramatically increased speeds if you're paying for the service from Comcast or wherever to get it. So like I said, I mean, I've gone within the last week to at times I was only getting 10 megabit down to now I'm consistently getting 200, 250, 300. And the other crazy thing I identified, and I'd encourage each of you to do this if you're having internet challenges, is I had enabled quality of service on my router, which says that it's supposed to prioritize certain traffic over others. That was causing me some tremendous issues. So normally you'd say enable quality of service to improve things like streaming or video or calls, but that was not working. Once I disabled quality of service, I immediately got better throughput. And the other thing is there was a setting in my router, one setting that was supposed to be advanced threat detection, which was part of why I was only getting 10 megabit down at time. It had actually nothing to do with Comcast. It was my own router doing something that was intercepting almost all traffic and blocking it. So change that setting. Now I'm doing great. The other thing that's interesting as just for this call, I contacted Comcast this morning to see what they could do to help me get from 300 to 400 up to what I'm rated for, what I'm paying for. And they said that normally they'd send out a technician, but that's not something they're going to be able to do for a long time. So I think I'm probably as good as I'm going to get, at least for the time being. So try each of those things, modem, router, update your firmware, update your cabling, and I think you'll be amazed at how you can get some better speeds than what you're getting today. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, and this I know a number of you raised in the little poll, the issue of kids, family. One of the things that I've done is I've had to segment my internet for a number of reasons, but one is just simple bandwidth considerations. If the kids are at home, they're wanting to game or stream, and I'm trying to do a webinar or I'm trying to do a conference call, I just can't have them sucking up all the bandwidth. So one of the things I'd encourage all of you to do is segment your internet. So here's what I've done. I've got, my modem coming in, or my cable modem connected to Comcast. I've got my router that's plugged into, and then I set up a mesh network. So in essence, what I've done is I've segmented the network so that my family connects to the mesh network. I can basically control bandwidth through that part of the network on theirs. They don't even see the wireless network that I'm on or can directly wire myself into. So I connect directly to the router. And then if all else fails, what I've found myself doing over the last week or two is I'll just bypass everything entirely and connect directly to the modem and make sure that I've got the absolute best connection I possibly can for work. So, and this is not necessarily how to deploy a remote workforce, but I'm going to encourage all of you to do one more thing, and that is deploy something like Circle on your network. I will tell you this is a lifesaver if you want to survive your family and COVID-19. One of the things that Circle allows me to do without having to intervene on an almost hourly basis between my kids and my wife and this constant fight over devices and time on devices and apps. By implementing Circle, I can control every device on the network, how much time each device is allowed to be on the network, how much time kids are allowed to be on each app. Automatic bedtimes are set. So I don't have to constantly debate with people about getting off devices or how much time they've been on devices. It's all controlled through Circle. So if you haven't done something like this, I think we're going to be in for working at home with our kids here for a while. I would encourage you to do something like this. So let's talk about to successfully deploy a remote workforce, we've all got to have dual monitors. I don't know how people can even live without two monitors. I think most of you, if you're not working from home, most people now have two monitors at work. Given the fact that we're going to be stuck like this for a while, I'd encourage everybody either to get two monitors or see if you can take your monitors from work home. And then I'd also encourage everybody, please get a headset and please get a camera. It is just so isolating here with us all stuck in our houses. Now, granted, it's nice to see our families, but at some point you'd like to see some other people. So we really have begun insisting that people, use their cameras, use headsets. It's really tough when you're trying to do a conference call with people coming through their computer speakers. So again, I'd encourage you to do that, both personally and for the organization. And this next suggestion, this is just more of a productivity tip, but I have found implementing a tool like TimeTrade, which shares my calendar with anyone outside the organization so that they can pick a time slot to schedule appointments, has just been tremendously helpful from a productivity standpoint. Instead of sending the constant emails back and forth. Now, Microsoft has actually released something now as part of Office 365 called Bookings, which we also have some people using. I haven't set that up yet. That's why I'm showing TimeTrade, but something like that I think would be a great, just a productivity tip. And then another productivity tip I just wanted to throw in here was I use something called SaneBox, which means that when my email comes in, the SaneBox, I train the email to go to an appropriate context or folder. And so my inbox used to be inundated with hundreds of emails a day. Now my inbox, I only get the, let's say, 50 most important emails that I need to look at, and everything else is automatically sent to its appropriate context. So, probably the next most important folder in the way they structure this training is a folder called Sane Later, which means these are things I definitely don't want to discard. I want to look at them, but they don't require an immediate response. So let's talk about the social aspects of deploying a remote workforce. Because, we have the advantage of when we started ArcherPoint back in 2002, we always intended to be virtual, but we knew we really needed to focus on how do we maintain that social connection given the fact that we won't see each other in the office. So one of the things is we turn on our cameras. And in fact, we've gotten even more diligent about that here with the current crisis. Just realizing how socially isolating it is for what we're all facing, and how that's why I have my camera on for this webinar. Historically, I might not have done that, but I just find it so helpful just to get to see people's faces, given the fact we're all stuck in our houses. The other thing that is really important, and this has taken me some time to learn, but I want to encourage you with your team, schedule regular check-ins. There have been times where I thought it wasn't really all that important to schedule regular check-ins, assuming that, hey, if somebody needed something, they'd reach out. But I will tell you, over the course of the last year, I've gotten much more diligent about scheduling regular check-ins with people I work with regularly, and it has really improved our communication and collaboration. So I'd encourage you to do the same thing. The other thing is, and I'm sure you're experiencing this in various forms, but we really as an organization try to, do virtual social activities, virtual happy hour being one of them. Another idea is we do a book club. So, we'll, as a group, it's voluntary. Whoever wants to come, comes. We'll vote on the book we'd like to go through. And that has just been an amazing way to connect people. But it's around a meaningful activity of learning and growing both personally and professionally. Another thing we've done, and this is Yammer, and kudos to whoever it was in the organization that came up with this idea. But we started this ArcherPoint at Play, and it's just a Yammer group where we post pictures of things we're doing. It's kind of like corporate Facebook, although I feel like it doesn't go over the top like oftentimes posts do on Facebook. But it's really just a great way to share with each other what's going on in our lives. From the most recent marathon to the most recent trip new babies being born. So this is, again, I'd encourage you, find a way to do something like this, whether you use Yammer or Slack or Teams. It is a great way to stay connected while we can't be physically in the same office. Oh, sorry. Then next area I wanted to talk about is culture. So this is a tough one. How do you really, kind of continue to encourage an amazing and thriving culture when you're not sitting close to each other? So one of the things that we did a few years ago, which has just been really helpful, is we implemented a tool called Office Vibe. This is probably one of the favorite tools I've ever implemented. Now, what you'll notice is it measures 13 different levers of employee engagement, from participation to engagement to employee net promoter score, personal growth, ambassadorship, relationship with peers, managers, recognition, wellness, feedback, satisfaction, happiness, alignment, okay, all across the top. And then we can break it out by department and get a sense of where are we having issues? Where do we need to focus? And then it's really important to watch this over time so you can see where things begin to change. So this is a tool that if any of you are interested, please shoot me an email. I believe there's still a link I can get where it'll offer an organization a 30-day free trial. It is just so helpful to know when you can't be talking with everyone every day, what's really going on. And I'll also tell you, what I found is even when you're face-to-face with people, there are a lot of people who are not inclined to tell you what they really think for fear of it creating conflict or becoming a problem. But when you give them a way to tell you anonymously what they're thinking or feeling, it is amazing the type of feedback you'll get. And this tool also provides for anonymous comments or feedback. So that's been really helpful for me to know what people are thinking, what they're feeling, what's working, what's not. And now I have to remind people when they send a comment in via the tool that it's anonymous. So if they want to talk further, they would have to let me know who I need to call. But again, look into something like this. I think you'll be amazed to understand what is the pulse of the organization and where do you need to focus on to improve it. Another thing we've done, which took us a while, I wish we'd done it sooner, was even years after we'd started, we were not communicating regularly enough. And so one of the things we began doing was a monthly company call. And now many of the things we do in that monthly company call are very intentional to create culture. So we always start the company call with a celebration of core values, honoring what we've seen our colleagues and teammates do over the course of the last month that honor those core values, the delighting, building, learning, and challenging. And it really is, not only is it a great way to celebrate and build that culture of celebration, but we also share financial results. We do updates for each part of the business. So if you are not, or if you haven't implemented something like this already, let's assume that we're all going to be stuck at home for a while. And I'd encourage you and your organization to implement something like a monthly company call. You'll be amazed at how well that will connect you with others. And what I also found in the absence of a regular communication, people begin creating and supplying their own narrative. And when people supply their own narrative, it's never a good narrative. People rarely assume the best about what could happen. So whether things are good or bad, I just wanted people to have the actual facts, the real information. So that's what we use the company call for, to share what's really going on in the business, what's working well, what challenges are, and what we can do about it. The next thing I want to focus on is security. So I don't think people appreciate enough, especially now that people are working from home, the added security risk that creates. So since we've always been a virtual organization, that's something that we've taken really seriously. So I want to talk to you about, as we deploy workforces remotely, what do we need to be doing around security? So one of the things that we implemented a while back is endpoint protection. Now there are a number of tools out there. We chose Sophos, and the key there is, not only does it make sure, many of you I know already have your corporate VPNs. Sophos, part of that's a VPN, but it's also making sure that the endpoint device is protected. It's always monitoring for the type of traffic that should be going over the business network. And so if you haven't done something like this, I'd encourage you to talk with your IT department about doing some type of endpoint protection. The other thing that we've done is we implemented BitLocker, which it's part of Windows 10, so it doesn't require any extra subscription or service. But the challenge being is now that, for us, our devices have always been at home. But if we're doing most of our work at home, we run a significant risk if anything were ever to happen to that endpoint or that device, if it were to be stolen or lost. So obviously we take our clients' data protection very seriously, as well as our own. So that's why we use BitLocker to make sure that if anything ever happened to one of our devices, it's encrypted. I don't think many people realize how easy it is to get into an unencrypted machine, even if you don't have the password. So with BitLocker, obviously that makes it, I don't know that anything makes it impossible, but it makes it nearly impossible. Another thing I want to talk about is I still see way too many organizations who haven't enabled two-factor authentication for their domain or network. Now, I will grant you, it is annoying when you're trying to log into a site and then you get a text and you have to put in the text before to let you in. But we have seen a number of clients and businesses that I'm aware of who have fallen victim to ransomware attacks. They've fallen victim to hackers, and a lot of the vectors for the things that have impacted these organizations, that would have made it significantly more difficult for the hackers to have gained access if someone had simply used two-factor authentication. Because one of the things that's increasingly difficult is if a hacker is able to get someone in your organization to give up their credentials, the hacker then logs in as that person, impersonates them. Well, once that person is impersonated, it looks as if it's coming from the organization. Two-factor authentication stops that hacker from being able to impersonate somebody. So again, if your organization hasn't done it, please encourage your IT to enable that, especially with everybody working from home. Another thing I want to talk about is, now we use Barracuda. Again, this from a security standpoint has been huge because it probably cuts out maybe half of the emails I was getting and 95% of the junk or spam. And so, the less opportunity anyone has to send malicious emails into the organization, the better. So Barracuda is cheap. If you need any suggestions, we'd always be happy to point you in the right direction for what we use. But again, I just encourage you to look into something like that. And then this is one of the tools that I'm probably most excited about that we have implemented, called NoBefore. So NoBefore actually is not only educates all of our employees on how to avoid, phishing emails, all the different ways that people can penetrate an organization, but then it also will automatically try to, it'll send emails trying to hack our own organization. And if you end up falling for one of their phishing emails, then you get immediately signed up for education. And obviously the shame of being duped into clicking on an email you shouldn't have clicked on. Now, one of the beauties about something like NoBefore is the emails they will send to try to trick you into clicking on them are really good, because they'll monitor your traffic and they will find the types of emails that seem to be the ones that you regularly engage in. So I can tell you, It is it's absolutely been a lifesaver for our organization to make sure that we are constantly trying to hack ourselves so that we don't get duped in the organization or any of our clients' organizations. And the final thing I want to talk about before I open the panel is one of the things that has become increasingly difficult is the fact that I'm sure hackers go on LinkedIn, they find out my role in the organization, and then they start sending emails, basically purporting to be me. They'll manipulate the email domain a little bit, trick people into either sending money, respond, or click on something. So one of the things it's begun doing is adding a digital signature to all of my emails, which basically then puts a little ribbon in the signature heading of every one of my emails so that people in the organization can be assured that the email they get is from me, because not only do I have two-factor authentication to help prevent anyone from pretending to be me, but the digital certificate is actually device specific. So if someone gets an email from me with the signature, they can rest assured not only did it come from me, but it came from an authenticated device. So I'm going to stop there and open it up for questions or the panelists and any comments or thoughts they might have.
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't realize until just several years back, our IT had sent out a notification that we needed to change the password on our router, and I had no idea. I didn't know how to do it. I'm in marketing, I'm not part of the tech crowd here, but that's extremely important. There's like a set number of passwords for each brand of router, and so anybody can get into your home network just by plugging in an IP address and guessing. Netgear's got like 5 passwords that are used, and one of them is just admin. So our guest. So definitely make sure that you quickly Google it, figure out based on your particular equipment how to just plug in your IP address and get in there and get your password changed, please, to something not easy to figure out.
Absolutely.
Have you found a resource for headsets in the current environment? I'm having trouble finding supplies for our company.
I've just been ordering from Amazon. Now I haven't tried to order within the last week or two, but so I'd love to hear if Amazon isn't able to ship those right now. I know they've prioritized some of their shipments around essential goods, but
Greg, this is Tammy.
Yeah.
I was just on a call with one of our larger customers that recently sent an entire office, home to work, and they're having difficulty getting cameras from Amazon.
Got it.
So there are some back orders, but we're not talking several weeks, but maybe a week is what they were indicating, that they'd be joining us with cameras in a week or so as soon as those all got shipped out.
Okay.
Mark has a question about VPN solutions. I guess ordering and getting access to those.
So I would be happy to connect you with our IT team. We found Sophos to be a really great solution for more than just VPN, but VPN is part of the solution. So that's what we use internally. And I would encourage you, as you're trying to tackle VPN, tackle it more holistically and make it a whole endpoint solution. But I'd be happy to connect you with our IT team, and they can talk about Sophos with you if that would help.
Another one that came in: how do you add a digital signature to your email? Is that feature only available with Microsoft Outlook with the digital signature?
Yes, so I've tried a couple different ones. I believe, is it TrustWave that we're using as an organization? I think that's the one we had the most success with. You basically go order what's called an SMIME certificate. Actually, let me go back to, I'll show you here. So this is what, when I say SMIME, that's how you spell it. But it's an SMIME certificate, And then I've also set that up on my iPhone as well. So it's basically it's a digital certificate, and I just watched the YouTube video, and it told me how to take my signed digital certificate and load it into Outlook, as well as how to load it into my Apple device.
Greg, one thing I was going to say, while people are doing their speed tests, one thing we learned early on too is that while you're doing a lot of work off your phone, remember that the Outlook apps are much more secure and robust than the Mail app that'll come with your iPhone.
Right.
So if you implementing the security in your Outlook on your desktops and laptops, that doesn't necessarily work in your Mail app. So make sure and put the Outlook app on your phone.
Oh, that's a good point.
I checked Amazon and saw that there were some headsets available. And I also wanted to just state that the monthly company calls that we have are very important. They allow everyone to connect and understand what's going on within the entire company. So I know you mentioned it earlier, Greg. I just think that's super important as everybody is working remote. It does give us a chance to all connect.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, and Jonathan, SharePass.com is what Netflix uses. Shannon has a question. You know, we're remote all the time, but she wants to know if you have any thoughts around just doing this temporarily, like remote leadership, team, communications plan, a source of truth handbook, etc., and how to drive cultural change.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
So, you know, how to drive cultural change. I think, you know, there are a number of things that I mentioned, you know, we do, from the monthly company call to Office Vibe. We've read a number of books. Probably the book that has informed our culture the most is a book by Dave Logan called Tribal Leadership. And so if you haven't read that, I'd really encourage you to look at that. And then there's also kind of what I'd almost call a corollary book to that called The 3 Laws of Performance. And so that really does inform a lot of what we do as we think about culture. I think the one thing I've realized, especially as we face this current crisis, is the importance of regular communication, even if I don't necessarily have something new to share. You know, I think as we're all stuck at home, if you're like me, watching the updates on kind of the world infection rate, as well as U.S., and then looking at your specific state, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear. What's this mean for us? What's it mean for me? And so it's really been helpful, I think, to just have a regular cadence of communication where at least once or twice a week we're sending out something. And as you can imagine, it's related to, you know, what's going on with the virus, how's it impacting our clients, how's it impacting us, you know, what can we do in response, how can we help? So, well, I think the one thing I realized years ago is you will always have a culture. It just may not be one you like. So it's, you know, how do we reinforce the things that we want to see both today and for the long haul?
I do want to say thank you, Greg, and I want to thank everybody for their time today. Also, keep an eye out for our blogs, and over the coming weeks, we're going to delve a little bit deeper into each one of these topics. We'll take some of your questions and try to answer those as well in a little more thoughtful and in-depth format in a blog post. So thank you again so much. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thank you. Stay safe.